Lesson 22. The pre-live checklist. What to verify before real money is at stake. Going live is the moment this whole thing stops being a simulation. Up to now, every loss was a number on a screen. Every weird bug was a story you'd tell later. Every bad trade was something you'd fix in the next backtest. The moment real money is in the loop, that changes. A stop loss that doesn't fire costs you dollars you actually earned. A strategy that misbehaves while you sleep costs you sleep. So before you flip that switch, there is a checklist, not a wish list, not a vague feeling of readiness. A real checklist, the kind a pilot runs through before takeoff. Most of the disasters I've seen in live trading didn't come from a strategy being wrong. They came from somebody skipping a check they were sure they didn't need. Better to wait one more day than to rush 1 second. That is the rule for this whole lesson. I am going to walk you through the 6 things you need to verify. Take your time on each. None of them are optional. Is your strategy actually good, or does it just look good? The first question is the simplest one. Is your strategy actually good, or does it just look good on paper? Start with the backtest. You want at least 3 months of history, ideally more, and you want it to cover different market environments. An uptrend, a downtrend, a sideways chop, a high volatility stretch, a quiet low volatility stretch. A strategy that only works in one of those is a strategy that will bleed money the moment the market rotates into the next phase. Crypto especially cycles hard between trending and choppy regimes, and a bot that prints in one will often bleed in the other. What numbers should you expect? Be honest with yourself here. A total return above 10% over the test period is a reasonable floor. Win rate above 50%. Maximum drawdown under 20%. And the lower the better. Profit to loss ratio above 1.5. Sharp ratio above 1. None of these individually is enough. A strategy can have a great win rate and still lose money because the losers are too big. You want all of them landing in the good range at minimum before you even think about live capital. The bigger question is overfitting. How many times did you tune the parameters to get this result? 5 times. 50. The more you tuned, the more likely you fit your strategy to the past rather than to the market. Use out-of-sample data, meaning a chunk of history the strategy has never seen, and check that it still holds up. If the backtest works on 2023, but falls apart on 2022, you don't have a strategy. You have a coincidence. Then there is the dry run. This is the step people skip, and it is the step that catches the most problems. Dry run means you run the bot against live market data. Real prices ticking in real time, but no orders actually go to the exchange. Run it for at least a week. 2 is better. Here is what the dry run tells you that the backtest can't. It tells you whether the bot actually runs without crashing for days on end. It tells you whether the data feed hiccups. It tells you whether your internet drops at the wrong moment. And it tells you whether the live numbers roughly match the backtest. Roughly is the key word. Real markets slip. Orders feel slightly worse than the signal price. Fees take a bite. A dry run that comes in 30 or 40% worse than the backtest is normal. A dry run that comes in 90% worse, or that shows totally different trade patterns, is a red flag. Figure out why before you go live. The plumbing has to work. The strategy is half the system. The plumbing is the other half. A great strategy on a flaky server will still lose money. Check the server first. CPU running below half capacity, memory below 70%. At least 10 gigs of free disk. Latency to the exchange below 100 milliseconds. The box should have been up and stable for at least 30 days without reboots. If it reboots itself randomly, that is not a server you want running live trades. Set the time zone to UTC because crypto markets are global and consistent timestamps matter when you are debugging something at 3 in the morning. Check the API keys. This is where I've seen the worst mistakes. So let me be specific. Your API key should have read and spot trading permissions enabled, and absolutely nothing else. In particular, withdrawal permissions should be off. Most exchanges let you create a key that can trade but cannot move funds off the exchange. Use that. While you are at it, whitelist the server's IP address, so the key only works from your machine. If the key leaks somehow, that one setting can be the difference between an annoying weekend and a wiped account. And put the keys in environment variables or a private config file that is in your git ignore. Never in the main config, never in version control. People have pushed API keys to public GitHub repos before. Don't be one of them. Then test the connection. Can you fetch the balance? Can you fetch the ticker for the pair you are trading? Can you place an order in dry run mode? Latency should be under 500 milliseconds for any of those calls. If it is slow now, it'll be slow when it actually matters. The config file is where strategy and execution meet. Read it through line by line before going live. Make sure dry run is set to false. Yes, people have gone live with a dry run config and wondered why nothing was happening. Make sure the stake amount and max open trades match what you actually decided on. Make sure your stop loss is in there, your protections are in there, your pair list is what you intended. A misread config is one of the easiest ways to lose money you didn't plan to risk. Backups are the unsexy part, nobody thinks about until they need them. Database, config files, strategy code, recent logs, all of it should be backed up automatically, daily, to somewhere that isn't the same machine. Push your strategy code to a remote Git repo, and test the recovery. An untested backup is a wish, not a backup. You should be able to wipe the box, restore from backup, and be back up and trading in under 10 minutes. If you can't, you don't really have a backup, you have a hope. Risk management is the one check you cannot rush. If you only do one check carefully, do this one. This is the part that decides whether a bad day costs you a little or costs you everything. Confirm the stop loss. Not just that it is set in the config, but that it actually fires. Watch it trigger in dry run. Make sure it sends a Telegram notification when it does, because you want to know every time it triggers, and you want to see it in writing. Decide on a hard maximum loss for the whole bot. 10% of starting capital is a common number. Have a plan for what happens when that line is crossed. The plan is, stop trading, not wait and see. Not, give it a day to recover, stop. Position sizing matters more than people think, and it is where beginners consistently get themselves into trouble. The rule of thumb is risk 1 to 2% of capital per trade. If you have $10,000 and your stop loss sits 3% away from your entry, that means a single trade should risk about $100 to $200, which means the position size works out to roughly $600 to $700. Multiply that by your max open trades and you get total exposure. 3 trades at $700 is $2,100, which is 21% of capital. That is a sensible starting exposure. Most beginners go way bigger than this and blow up their account on a single bad day. Don't be most beginners. Turn on the protection mechanisms Freqtrade ships with. Stop loss guard locks the bot after several stop losses fire in a row, so a string of small losses becomes a pause instead of a freefall. Max drawdown shuts things down if the cumulative loss gets too deep. Low profit pairs stops trading pairs that consistently underperform. These are cheap insurance, and turning them off to let the strategy breathe is a classic way to discover you should have left them on. How much money? And what are you hoping for now? The money part. How much? And what are you actually hoping to get back? Start small. 1,000 USDT is the floor I'd recommend for a first live run. 3 to 5,000 is more comfortable. Use money you can afford to lose, full stop, not your rent money, not your savings. Definitely not borrowed funds. If the entire amount went to zero next week, you should be able to shrug and move on. If you can't shrug at that thought, it is too much. Keep most of your funds off the exchange. The exchange is for trading capital only. The big rest sits in a cold wallet you control. Exchange failures happen. FTX is the obvious example, but it is not the only one, and when they happen, customer funds are often gone. Don't leave more on the exchange than the bot actually needs to do its job. Profit targets. Please be realistic. 3 to 5% a month is a solid conservative target that compounds nicely over a year. 5 to 10 is aggressive but possible in good conditions. Anything beyond 10% monthly is either a lucky streak or a fantasy. And fantasies are how people take risks they shouldn't. Honestly, controlling your drawdown matters more than chasing return. A strategy that returns 5% a month with a max drawdown of 8% is genuinely better than one that returns 10% a month, but draws down 25%. You'll live through the first. The second will shake you out at the worst moment, probably right before the recovery. Fees, calculate them. If you are paying 0.1% per CDA and you do 60 trades a month at $500 each, that is $60 a month in fees, $720 a year. On a $5,000 account, that is a meaningful chunk of your profit. The math has to work after fees, not before. A lot of marginal strategies look profitable in a backtest that ignores or undercounts fees, and then bleeds slowly once they're live. Freqtrade's backtest does model fees, but only if you configured them correctly. Check that. You need eyes on it. Live trading is not fire and forget. You need a way to watch what is happening. Set up Telegram notifications. Test them by triggering a dry run trade and watching the message come through. You want entry alerts, exit alerts, stop loss alerts, and especially error alerts. The error alert is the one that matters most. If the bot hits a problem at 3 in the morning, you want to know about it at 3 in the morning. Not when you wake up at 7 and discover the bot has been stuck for 4 hours. Set error alerts to be loud. Everything else can be silent if you want. Have a daily rhythm, a morning check, a midday glance, an evening summary. 5 minutes each. Look at the open positions, scan the Telegram history, check the logs for errors. Once a week, sit down for a longer review. What was the best trade? What was the worst? Did the strategy behave the way you expected it to? If something feels off, dig in. Intuition isn't always right, but it is worth checking when real money is on the line. Set hard alert thresholds in advance. Single trade loss above some percent. Daily loss above some percent. Consecutive losses above some number. Pick the numbers when you are calm, before the bot has drawn down, and write them down somewhere. You'll actually see them. When the alert fires, you follow the plan you made before the emotions kicked in. That is the whole point of writing it down early. The part nobody puts on a checklist. This is the part that kills most live attempts. And it has nothing to do with code or config. Going live changes how you feel about every number. A -5% month in backtest is just a number you scroll past. A -5% month in live trading, when it is your actual money, is a pit in your stomach that doesn't go away. Be honest with yourself about how you'll react. Will you be tempted to fiddle with the strategy every week, chasing a slightly better backtest? Will you panic and shut things down at the first red week? Will you get greedy after a win and pump in more money than you planned? Will you override the bot manually because you just have a feeling about this one trade? Write down your rules before you start. Don't override the bot manually. Don't revenge trade after a loss. Don't chase perfection. Stick to the position sizes you decided on when you were calm. If you find yourself wanting to break one of these rules, treat that as a signal to step away for a day, not to act. The urge to intervene is usually the worst voice to listen to in the moment. Have an emergency plan for the things that can go wrong. What do you do if the bot loses 5 trades in a row? What if it drops 8% in a single day? What if your network goes down? What if the exchange has an outage? The plan doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to exist, and you should be able to execute it in under 5 minutes. The simplest version is, send Tundai Stoppy via Telegram to halt new entries, manually close whatever you need to close, kill the bot, disable the API key if you suspect any compromise, then walk away and analyze what happened once you've calmed down. Decisions made in the heat of a live loss are almost always worse than decisions made from a checklist written in advance. Putting it together after all 6 of those checks, you should have a clear feeling for whether you are ready. If any one of them is shaky, you are not ready. If the strategy is great, but the monitoring is half set up, you are not ready. If the technical side is solid but your stop-loss plan is vague, you are not ready. If everything technical works but you haven't been honest with yourself about how you'll handle a losing week, you are not ready. Every dimension has to clear the bar. When you are ready, really ready, all 6 boxes genuinely checked, start small. 1,000 to 3,000 USDT, 2 or 3 positions max. Run it for a couple of weeks at that size before you even think about scaling up. The goal of the first live stretch isn't to make money. It is to prove the machine works end-to-end, with real consequences, and that you can handle the psychology of watching it run on your actual capital profits. In week 1 are a bonus. The real win is discovering, over a few weeks, that nothing exploded, the bot did what you expected, and you slept fine through all of it. Going live is a marathon, not a sprint. Most of the people who fail at this don't fail because their strategy was bad. They fail because they rushed in before the checks were done, or because they sized up too fast after a good week, or because they lost their nerve at exactly the wrong moment. The checklist is the defense against all 3 of those failure modes. Run through it honestly. Wait the extra day. Then, when you do go live, you'll actually be ready for what comes next.